AITA for making her wedding planner pay after she treated me like a checkbook? I'm Michael, 38, and by the time I realized my fiancée Sabrina had turned our wedding into a stage where I paid for the lights, but wasn't allowed near the spotlight, I already had vendor emails stacked in my inbox, deposit receipts in a kitchen drawer, and a shared calendar full of appointments she told people I didn't care enough to attend. That is the part people didn't understand at first. I didn't wake up one morning angry at Sabrina. I didn't get engaged with some secret suspicion that she was going to use me. I loved her. I really did. When Sabrina and I first got serious, she had this way of making an ordinary night feel like something worth remembering. We could be eating takeout on the couch with laundry half folded beside us, and she would turn it into a whole event. She would light one candle, steal the last dumpling off my plate, and make some dramatic toast with a can of sparkling water like we were at a five-star restaurant. She was funny. Not polite funny, either. She could make a whole table laugh until people had tears in their eyes. She remembered little things. If I mentioned once that I liked a certain coffee creamer, she'd notice it at the store 3 weeks later and toss it in the cart without saying anything. When she was warm, she was really warm. That's what made the rest of it harder to name. The first small digs didn't feel like warnings. They felt like couple jokes. At dinner with friends, she would pat my shoulder and say, "Michael is boring, but he's practical, and that's why we keep him around." Everyone would laugh, so I laughed too. Once, when someone asked how I proposed, I started telling the story, and Sabrina cut in halfway through. "Okay, he's making it sound very emotional," she said, smiling. It was sweet, but the man almost forgot to take the ring box out of his jacket pocket. He was sweating like he was being audited. That was true, technically. I had been nervous, but the way she told it made me feel like a prop in my own memory. Another time, after I spent a Saturday morning driving to look at venues with her, she told her friend Mia on speakerphone, "He survived 3 hours of linen samples. Someone give him a medal." I said, "I actually had opinions about the food setup." Sabrina winked at me and said into the phone, "He thinks he had opinions." It was cute. I told myself it was harmless. Some people teased. Some couples had that rhythm. I didn't want to become the guy who took every joke personally. Then there was Derek. Derek had been in Sabrina's life for years. Long before me. She described him as her best friend, but not in the way people say best friend casually. Derek had a reserved seat in her emotional life. He knew her favorite songs, the lipstick shade she wore when she wanted to feel confident, the restaurants she hated even though she pretended to like them. He was in old birthday photos, holiday photos, random photos from years I hadn't been around for. I asked about him early on, not aggressively. Just the normal question. "Did you two ever date?" Sabrina made a face like I had asked if she owned a pet snake. "No," she said. Then after a pause, "Not really. We were just close. It was never the right thing." That answer did not exactly make me feel better, but I let it go. I was 38, not 18. I knew people came with histories. I wasn't going to police a friendship just because it had complicated edges. Derek was friendly enough to my face. Maybe too friendly. He had that easy confidence of a man who never felt he had to explain why he was in the room. When Sabrina and I got engaged, he hugged her for a little too long, then clapped me on the back and said, "You better take care of her, man." I remember thinking, that's a strange thing to say to the man she just agreed to marry, but I smiled anyway. At first, his involvement in the wedding seemed normal. He commented on a venue photo Sabrina posted in our friend group chat. He recommended a photographer he knew through someone. He sent Sabrina a playlist idea and said, "This feels like you." Then he started showing up in conversations that should have been between us. One night Sabrina and I were sitting at the kitchen island with a stack of invitation samples between us. I liked a simple cream card with clean black lettering. She liked one with gold foil and soft pink edges. "I think this one feels more like us," I said, tapping the simple one. She looked at it, then at her phone. "What?" I asked. "I sent pictures to Derek," she said. "He thinks the cream one looks like a corporate holiday card." I sat back. "We're sending these from both of us. Why is Derek voting?" "He's not voting. He's giving feedback. He hasn't been part of this conversation." Sabrina rolled her eyes. "He just gets my taste. Don't make it weird." That became her favorite line whenever I tried to talk about it. "Don't make it weird. You're overthinking. You're reading too much into this. He's just helping. He's better with details." The details grew legs. Derek had opinions on the playlist. Derek had thoughts about the photographer's editing style. Derek thought our original centerpiece idea was two hotel conference. Derek suggested a different floral arch. Derek liked smoked glass candle holders. Derek said the cocktail hour needed a signature moment. Derek thought the first dance song Sabrina and I had picked was too predictable. That last one stung because I was the one who picked it. It was a song that had played during one of our early dates, when we got caught in the rain and ended up in the entryway of a closed shop, laughing and soaked. Sabrina used to say it was our little movie scene. Then one evening she said, "Derek thinks we can do better." I looked at her across the couch. Derek wasn't standing in the rain with us. She sighed like I was exhausting her. "Michael, it's a song. You're acting like he stole your vows." "No," I said. "I'm acting like I want one part of our wedding to be ours." She softened then, or at least pretended to. She slid closer and put a hand on my knee. "Baby, it is ours," she said. "You know that. I'm just trying to make it beautiful." That was another pattern. If I got close to naming the problem, Sabrina got soft just long enough to make me feel guilty for naming it. I tried to set a boundary a few weeks later. It was a Tuesday night. There were 2 unpaid vendor invoices on the kitchen counter, a half-empty glass of iced tea beside Sabrina's laptop, and a shared calendar notification on my phone reminding us about a menu tasting that Friday. I said, "Can we talk about Derek and the wedding?" Her shoulders tightened before she even turned around. "What now?" "I'm not asking you to stop having friends," I said carefully. "I'm asking to be treated like the person you're marrying. Some of these decisions feel like they're happening between you and him, and I'm just hearing about them after." She leaned back against the counter and crossed her arms. "You're acting insecure. I'm not trying to control anything. You say that, but every time Derek gives an opinion, you get weird. Because his opinions keep replacing mine." She gave a short laugh, not happy, more irritated. "You make everything feel like a budget meeting. That's because I'm the one getting the invoices." Her face changed then. It was small, but I saw it. The annoyance sharpened. "So that's what this is," she said. "You think because you paid some deposits, you get extra votes." I stared at her. "Sabrina, we agreed on the budget together. And now I have to feel guilty every time I want one beautiful thing." That night ended with her crying in the bedroom and me sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the invoices like they might explain how I had become the villain in a conversation I thought was about partnership. The wedding fund was supposed to make everything cleaner. We had a shared account for wedding expenses. Sabrina contributed to it, and I contributed more because I could. That part had never bothered me. We talked about it before opening the account. I told her I didn't mind paying more as long as we made decisions together and kept each other in the loop. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "That's why I love you. You're steady." For a while, the account worked fine. Venue deposit, florist deposit, photographer retainer, Zelle transfers labeled with boring practical notes like caterer first payment and DJ hold date. I kept receipts in a manila folder in the kitchen drawer with the batteries and tape. Sabrina joked that it was very me to have a folder. Then one afternoon, while I was standing in line at a grocery store, my phone buzzed with a bank alert. A payment had gone out of the wedding fund for a custom decor package. It was not small. It was large enough that my first thought was, there has to be a mistake. I stepped out of line and called Sabrina. She answered on the 4th ring, cheerful and distracted. "Hey, what's up? Did you approve a decor payment?" There was a pause. "Oh, yeah, that. It was the package we talked about. We talked about looking at options. We didn't agree to pay for it today. It was basically already decided." "No, Sabrina, it wasn't." She sighed. I could hear traffic on her end, then the soft click of her car blinker. Derek found a vendor who can do the smoked glass and the hanging florals. They had 1 slot left. If we waited, we'd lose it. Derek found it. "Please don't start. I asked you to talk to me before making big changes. And I'm telling you now." After the money left the account, she went quiet for a second, then said, "The wedding is mostly for the bride anyway. Everyone knows that." I didn't answer right away. The grocery store doors opened and closed behind me. A woman walked past carrying a toddler and a bag of oranges. The whole world kept moving like my chest hadn't just tightened. Finally, I said, "That's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to have a wedding that doesn't feel like a spreadsheet." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. That was the first time I called Marcus and told him the whole thing. Marcus is my closest friend, The kind of person who can listen for 20 minutes without making a noise and then say one sentence that makes you mad because it's accurate. We met for coffee the next morning. I had barely slept. I told him about Derek, the decor charge, the jokes, the way Sabrina kept saying I was insecure. Marcus stirred his coffee even though he hadn't added anything to it. "You're not being patient," he said. "You're financing your own demotion." I leaned back. "That's harsh. Is it wrong?" I looked out the window. He continued, quieter. "You keep calling it patience because that sounds better than fear. I'm not afraid of her." "I didn't say you were. I think you're afraid of being the bad guy." That landed harder than I wanted it to. Marcus tapped the table with one finger. "Stop arguing with the version she tells people. Start keeping track of facts. I don't want to turn my engagement into a case file." "Then don't. But if someone is already building a case against you, it's stupid to walk in empty-handed." I hated that he was right. For the next week, I didn't confront Sabrina. I watched. I listened. I checked what I should have been checking all along. We had a joint planning email account, mostly because vendors kept losing threads when Sabrina used her personal email and I used mine. I logged in one night after Sabrina fell asleep. I wasn't snooping through her personal messages. This was our wedding email, the one both of us had the password to, the one tied to contracts I was paying for. Still, my stomach felt heavy as I searched vendor names. That was when I noticed the first contact change. On the photographer thread, Derek had been copied before me. Sabrina had written, "Adding Derek here because he's helping me make sure the vibe stays consistent." The photographer replied, "Great, happy to keep Derek in the loop." I had replied 2 days later asking about the payment schedule, not knowing Derek had already been added. Then I checked the decorator thread. Same thing, except worse. Sabrina had written, "Please send future design updates to me and Derek first. Michael only needs the final invoice." I read that sentence 3 times. Michael only needs the final invoice. I opened another thread. The planner had sent over a revised concept board. Derek replied with comments. Sabrina replied with heart emojis. I wasn't on the email at all. Then I opened the contracts folder. The photographer contract still listed me as the responsible payer. The decorator invoice listed the shared account for the deposit and my personal card for any remaining balance if the account didn't clear. The planner's payment schedule had my name on the authorization line from the original deposit. So Derek was part of the vision. Sabrina was part of the approvals. I was part of the bill. The next planning meeting was supposed to be routine. It was at the planner's small studio, with fabric samples spread across a table and a little tray of bottled water near the door. Sabrina arrived with Derek. Not met him there. Arrived with him. He wore a gray jacket and carried an iced coffee. He gave me a casual nod like we were co-workers about to sit through a staff meeting. "Hey man." "Derek," I said. Sabrina kissed my cheek quickly and sat beside him, not beside me. I noticed. I hated that I noticed. The planner, a woman named Tessa, opened her laptop and said, "Okay, so Derek sent the updated inspiration board, and I think we have a much more cohesive direction now." I looked at Sabrina. She didn't look back. Tessa clicked through images of dark candle holders, dramatic florals, a different table layout, and a lounge area I had never seen before. I said sorry. Derek sent the updated board. Tessa's smile flickered. Yes, he's been helping Sabrina refine the concept. I turned to Sabrina. Why is Derek the contact on a contract I'm paying for? Derek lifted one hand. I'm just trying to help Sabrina get what she wants. I asked Sabrina. Sabrina laughed. Not loudly, but enough that Tessa looked down at her keyboard. Michael, don't do this here. I'm asking a simple question. You're making it awkward. I didn't change vendor contacts behind your back. Her eyes flashed. Then she smiled, the public smile, the one that made everyone else feel like she was the reasonable person in the room. Derek is better with details, she said. You make everything about money. I make invoices about money. Derek muttered. You're reading way too much into this. Sabrina leaned back and gave a little shrug. Honestly, Michael's job is to sign checks, not make decisions. There it was. The room went silent for half a breath. Tessa froze with her hand on the mouse. Derek looked down at his coffee. Sabrina looked pleased with herself, like she'd said something clever enough to end the argument. I felt heat climb up my neck, but strangely, I didn't feel explosive. I felt still. I closed the vendor folder in front of me, slid it into my bag, and stood. Sabrina blinked. Where are you going? I looked at Tessa. Please send every unpaid invoice to Derek, since he's making the decisions. Tessa's mouth opened slightly. Then I looked at Sabrina. And if I'm not part of the decision, I'm not part of the invoice. Sabrina's face tightened. Don't be dramatic. I gave Derek a quick look. Congratulations on the promotion. Then I walked out. Sabrina called twice before I reached my car. I didn't answer. She texted before I pulled out of the parking lot. Are you seriously throwing a tantrum right now? Then, you embarrassed me. Then, we have deposits down, Michael. I almost laughed when I read that one. Deposits mattered now. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove to Marcus's place and sat at his kitchen table while he made coffee I didn't drink. I told him exactly what happened. He didn't say, I told you so. I appreciated that. Instead, he said, now you know. Don't fight her performance. Bring the receipts. So I did. I went home after midnight. Sabrina was in bed, awake, facing away from the door. I could tell by the blue glow of her phone under the blanket. She didn't speak when I walked in. I didn't speak either. The next morning, I started with contracts. I made a list of every vendor. Venue, photographer, caterer, florist, decor, planner, DJ, hair and makeup, which I had not even known I was partially funding until I saw the invoice. Transportation, cake. Then I checked whose name was on each contract, what could be canceled, what could be refunded, and what I was actually responsible for. I called vendors one by one, calm and polite. Hi, this is Michael. I'm calling about the payment authorization on the account. Most of them were professional. A few sounded uncomfortable because they had clearly been dealing with Sabrina and Derek more than me. The photographer confirmed that the contract was under my name, but only the deposit was non-refundable. Future payments could be canceled if I sent written notice before the next deadline. The decorator said the custom items had a partial cancellation penalty, but the remaining balance was not due yet. The planner said all future invoices could be addressed to Sabrina if she chose to continue. I took notes. I saved confirmation numbers. I printed emails. Then I checked the shared wedding account. I calculated Sabrina's contributions and mine. I moved my remaining personal contribution back to my own account and left every dollar she had put in untouched. I did not drain the account. I did not punish her financially. I simply stopped allowing my money to sit there like a pile of guaranteed yes. I closed the extra card attached to my account that Sabrina had been using for wedding purchases. Not her personal card. Not anything she needed to live. Just the extra card under my name that she had used for deposits and quick wedding errands. The email I sent vendors was simple. Please remove my authorization for any future charges and send remaining balances to Sabrina directly. I am not approving additional payments under my name. No insults. No long story. No accusations. Then I opened the messages. The group chat hurt worse than the contracts. There was a shared friend group chat where people posted memes, dinner plans, wedding jokes, all of that. Sabrina had always been quick in there, and I had missed how often the jokes were at my expense because she wrapped them in little laughing emojis. A few weeks earlier, Mia had asked, "Is Michael excited for the wedding or just letting you do your bride thing?" Sabrina replied, "Michael is basically a wallet with a calendar app." People sent laughing reactions. Derek replied, "Accurate." Sabrina wrote, "He's useful when deposits are due." I stared at my phone for a long time. It wasn't just the words. It was how easy they looked. Like this was a version of me everyone had already agreed on. In another thread, Derek had texted Sabrina about the decor package. I had seen screenshots because Sabrina had sent parts of the conversation to the planning email by mistake, probably trying to forward vendor details. She included more than she meant to. Derek had written, "Don't tell Michael yet. He'll overthink it." Sabrina replied, "I know. I'll handle him." There was another message in the same forwarded chain, a few lines down, that made my hands go cold. "Derek, what if he says no to the extra cost?" Sabrina, "Don't worry. Michael will pay for it once it's too late to change. He gets mad, then he caves. He always does." I read it once. Then again. Then I put my phone down and walked around the kitchen because I suddenly couldn't sit still. He gets mad, then he caves. He always does. That was when the whole thing stopped feeling messy and started feeling calculated. I had been telling myself Sabrina got carried away. I had been telling myself Derek liked being included but didn't understand the position it put me in. I had been telling myself wedding stress made people act badly. But that message was not stress. That was strategy. I kept digging. In a separate message to Mia, Sabrina had written, "He doesn't care about the wedding. He just wants to control the budget, so I feel guilty." That one almost made me laugh because my inbox told the opposite story. I had emails where I asked Sabrina if she preferred plated dinner or buffet. I had calendar invites for venue walkthroughs that I created after she said she kept forgetting dates. I had follow-ups to the caterer asking about vegetarian options because Sabrina's cousin didn't eat meat. I had photographer questions, DJ notes, hotel block reminders, and menu tasting confirmations. I had text messages from Sabrina saying, "Can you handle the florist deposit for now? I'll move money over Friday." Then, "Can you call the venue? You're better at asking boring questions." Then, "Can you put this on your card and I'll pay you back after my next paycheck?" I had done those things because I thought that was what partners did. She had turned around and told people I only showed up when money was involved. By the time I finished printing everything, it was almost 2 a.m. The kitchen table was covered in paper. Bank statements, vendor emails, screenshots, cancellation confirmations. A simple timeline I typed in plain language because I didn't want to stand there later sounding emotional and scattered. Marcus came over the next day and looked through it with me. He didn't touch the papers at first. He just stood there with his arms crossed, reading. After a while, he said, "This is ugly." "I know. No, I mean ugly in a way people can't explain away. I don't want to show it to anyone." "Then don't unless she makes you." That was my plan. I wasn't trying to blast Sabrina to everyone. I wasn't going to send screenshots out for sport. I just wanted out from under the bills and out from under the lie. Sabrina made that impossible by getting to everyone first. It started with Elaine, Sabrina's mother. Elaine called me 2 days after I sent the vendor emails. She had always been polite to me, but protective of Sabrina in the way some mothers are when they still see their grown daughter as a girl who needs rescuing from consequences. I answered because ignoring her would only make things worse. "Michael," she said, without hello, "what is going on?" "Sabrina and I are dealing with some wedding issues." "Wedding issues?" She's sobbing. "She says you cut off payments and humiliated her because you're jealous of Derek." I closed my eyes. That's not what happened. She has dreamed about this for years. "I understand that." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're punishing her for wanting one beautiful thing." I gripped the edge of the counter. "Elaine, I'm not punishing her. I stopped authorizing charges for decisions I was excluded from. You're too old to be acting jealous over a friend." That sentence told me Sabrina had already built the frame. If I defended myself too hard, I would sound jealous. If I stayed quiet, I looked guilty. I said, "I'm not going to argue with you over the phone. Sabrina knows what changed and why." Elaine's voice dropped. "A real partner doesn't count every dollar. A real partner doesn't hide invoices under someone else's name." She went quiet, but only for a second. "I hope you think about what you're doing." "I have," I said. "That's why I'm doing it." She hung up on me. After that came the friend messages. Mia texted, "I know weddings are stressful, but this is really hurting Sabrina." Another friend, Aaron, wrote, "Man, I get being uncomfortable, but Derek has been around forever. You can't make her choose every time you feel insecure." Someone else sent, "Real talk, money shouldn't be used as control." I typed and deleted 10 different replies. In the end, I sent almost nothing. To Mia, I wrote, "You do not have the full story." She replied, "Then tell it." I almost did. Instead, I put my phone down. Sabrina came home that night like she was prepared for a scene. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and stood in the living room with her arms folded. "So this is who you are now," she said. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, reviewing a refund confirmation. Someone who reads contracts before paying them? Apparently. Her mouth tightened. "You are being cruel." I canceled what I was legally allowed to cancel. I redirected future invoices for the wedding and Derek redesigned without me. "You keep saying his name like that." "Like what?" "Like he did something wrong by helping me." I closed the laptop. "I don't have a Derek problem. I have a being erased problem." She gave me this look, part disbelief, part disgust. "You're so dramatic. You changed vendor contacts behind my back. Because you made everything hard. I asked to be included. You asked to approve every dollar." "No, I asked not to be charged for decisions I didn't make." Her voice cracked then, but I couldn't tell if it was real or practiced. You're making me feel like I have to beg for the wedding I wanted. I stood up. You didn't beg. You planned around me. She looked away. I almost showed her the message then. The one about how I would cave. I almost pulled out the folder and ended it right there in the living room. But something stopped me. Maybe I wanted to see if she would tell the truth without being forced. Maybe I didn't want to accept that she wouldn't. I said, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" She stared at me. "What does that mean?" "It means this is your chance to be honest." She laughed once, sharp and bitter. "Oh my God, you sound like a cop." That was the end of the conversation. The family dinner happened the following Sunday. It was supposed to be casual. Sabrina's aunt was hosting because a cousin was in town, and a few friends were invited because that was how Sabrina's circle worked. People flowed in and out of family gatherings like everyone belonged everywhere. I wasn't going to go. I had already told Sabrina I needed space. Then Elaine texted me, "Please come Sunday. This needs to be handled face to face. Sabrina is devastated." I showed Marcus the text. He said, "That is not an invitation. That is a courtroom summons. I shouldn't go." Maybe not. But if I don't, they'll all sit there and decide I'm guilty. Marcus looked at me for a second. "Then don't go empty-handed." So I brought the folder. Not in a dramatic briefcase. Not with some grand plan to slap papers on the table. Just a plain black folder tucked under my arm. Marcus came too because he had been invited by Aaron before everything blew up, and because he said he didn't trust me to sit alone while everyone threw soft knives at me. The house smelled like baked chicken and garlic when we walked in. There were serving dishes on the counter, paper plates near the stove, and people standing around with drinks pretending not to watch me enter. Sabrina was in the dining room with Elaine and Derek. Her eyes were red, but her makeup was perfect. Derek leaned against the wall beside her, quiet, concerned, hands in his pockets. When Sabrina saw me, her face did something strange. For half a second, she looked relieved. Then she saw the folder, and the relief disappeared. Dinner started tense. People talked about safe things. Traffic. A cousin's new dog. A recipe Elaine wanted. Sabrina barely ate. She kept dabbing at her eyes with a napkin even though no tears had fallen yet. Then, about 20 minutes in, Elaine set down her fork and said, "I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room." Marcus muttered under his breath, "Here we go." Sabrina looked down at her plate. Elaine turned to me. "Michael, Sabrina feels abandoned." I didn't answer immediately. Sabrina's aunt said softly, "Weddings bring out stress in everyone." Mia looked at me like she wanted me to say the right thing, but had already decided I probably wouldn't. Sabrina inhaled shakily. "I didn't want this to be a big thing," she said. That was so untrue, I almost smiled. She continued, "I just wanted a wedding that felt like me. And every time I got excited, Michael made it about money or Derek. He made me feel like I had to beg for the wedding I wanted." Elaine reached over and squeezed her hand. Derek stared into his drink. Sabrina's voice trembled. Then he canceled things. He cut off payments. He embarrassed me with vendors. I don't even know what's still happening anymore. Aaron looked at me. "Man, that's rough." Another friend said, "I mean, taking money back once plans are in motion is kind of a lot." Elaine said, "Sabrina deserved one special season without being punished." I felt every eye on me. The old version of me would have tried to explain gently. I would have softened my words so nobody thought I was attacking her. I would have accepted part of the blame just to lower the temperature in the room. But all I could hear was that message. He gets mad, then he caves. He always does. I set the folder on the table. Sabrina's head snapped up. I said, "You all heard I walked away because I was jealous. Here's what I actually walked away from." Nobody spoke. I opened the folder and pulled out the timeline first. "I'm not going to yell," I said. "I'm not going to call anyone names. I'm going to show dates, payments, and messages. Then you can decide what you think." Elaine's expression hardened. "Michael, is this really necessary?" "Yes," I said, because apparently my silence was useful to everyone except me. I handed the first page to Elaine because she had been the loudest voice defending Sabrina. It listed the major wedding payments with dates and amounts. Venue deposit, photographer retainer, caterer hold, florist deposit, planner fee, decor deposit. "These are payments I made or contributed the majority of," I said. Not because I was forced, because I believed Sabrina and I were planning together. Mia leaned closer to Elaine to look. I handed Aaron the vendor contact emails. "This is the photographer thread where Derek was copied before me." Aaron's brow furrowed. This is the decorator thread where Sabrina wrote that future design updates should go to her and Derek first, and I only needed the final invoice. The room shifted. Not dramatically. No gasps. Just small physical changes. Someone sat back. Someone else stopped chewing. Mia's eyes moved quickly across the page. Sabrina said, "You're taking that out of context." I looked at her. What is the context that makes Michael only needs the final invoice respectful? Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. Derek said, "It wasn't like that. I was just helping." I nodded. "You were helping with decisions. Were you helping with payments?" He looked away. I pulled out the decor invoice. This is the custom decor package Sabrina approved from the shared wedding fund after I asked to discuss large changes first. This is the same package Derek suggested. Elaine said, "Couples disagree over wedding details." Yes, I said. Couples disagree. They don't remove one person from the decision and leave him on the bill. Sabrina's eyes filled. This time the tears came faster. "You're humiliating me," she said. "No," I said. My voice was quieter than I expected. "You humiliated me when you made me the wallet and him the partner. I'm just showing the receipt." That sentence landed hard. I saw it on Elaine's face, even though she tried to hide it. Sabrina shook her head. "That's not fair." I pulled out the group chat screenshots. "This is you telling friends I was basically a wallet with a calendar app." Mia's face changed immediately because she remembered reacting to it. "This is you saying I'm useful when deposits are due." Aaron looked down at his plate. I pulled out the emails showing appointments I had booked and questions I had asked vendors. "This is me scheduling the venue walkthrough after Sabrina said she forgot. This is me asking the caterer about menu options. This is me following up with the photographer. So when people were told I didn't care about the wedding, this is what was happening privately." Sabrina wiped her face. "I was venting." I nodded once. Venting is saying you're frustrated. This was a story. Then I pulled out the screenshot I had avoided looking at for 2 days. "I wasn't going to show this unless I had to," I said. Sabrina went still. Derek's face changed before anyone read it. That told me enough. I handed the page to Elaine first. She read it. Her eyes stopped moving halfway down. Mia whispered, "What does it say?" Elaine didn't answer, so Aaron took the page and read it out loud, not theatrically, just confused. "Don't worry. Michael will pay for it once it's too late to change. He gets mad, then he caves. He always does." The room went quiet in a way I had never heard before. Not polite quiet. Not awkward quiet. The kind where everyone suddenly understands they are standing closer to the truth than they want it to be. Elaine looked at Sabrina. "Sabrina," she said, barely above a whisper. Sabrina started crying harder. "I was stressed," she said. I almost felt sorry for her then. Not enough to save her from it, but enough to remember that I had loved her. "You were counting on me giving in," I said. She shook her head. "I didn't mean it like that." Marcus spoke for the first time. "How else do you mean that?" Derek pushed off the wall. "Look, I think this is getting blown out of proportion." Mia turned to him. "If this was your vision too, how much did you pay for it?" Derek blinked. Nobody moved. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Money is between them. I stayed out of that." Aaron let out a small, humorless laugh. "Convenient." Derek looked offended. "I didn't know it was that serious." I said, "You told her not to tell me because I'd overthink it." His mouth shut. Elaine put the papers down slowly. All the fight had drained out of her face. "I didn't know she changed the contracts," she said. Sabrina looked at her mother like she had been betrayed. "Mom." Elaine didn't look away from the table. "I didn't." That was the moment Sabrina lost the room. Not completely, not in some movie way where everyone turned on her at once. Real life is messier than that. Some people still looked uncomfortable. Some people clearly wished I had handled it privately, even though Sabrina was the one who made it public. But the version where I was just a jealous man punishing a sweet bride was gone. People started asking questions. Why was Derek copied before Michael? Why was Michael still listed as the payer? Did you really tell vendors to send him only final invoices? Sabrina kept saying, "It wasn't like that," but every time someone asked, she had fewer words. Derek tried to leave early. He said he had somewhere to be. Nobody stopped him. Sabrina watched him go with this stunned expression, like she expected him to stand beside her and explain everything away. He didn't. He just put his cup in the sink, mumbled, "I'm sorry this got messy," and walked out. That almost hurt to watch. Almost. I gathered the papers after a while. I didn't leave copies scattered around. I wasn't trying to feed gossip. I had shown enough. At the door, Elaine stopped me. Her eyes were red now too. "Michael," she said, "I owe you an apology for what I said on the phone." I nodded. "Thank you." She looked toward the dining room, where Sabrina was sitting with her aunt, crying into a napkin. "I didn't know," Elaine said again. "I believe you." That was all I had for her. Marcus walked me to my car. "You okay?" he asked. "No." Good answer. I laughed once, even though nothing was funny. The aftermath was quieter than the confrontation, but somehow more exhausting. Vendors started contacting Sabrina directly for unpaid balances. I knew because she sent me screenshots with messages like, "Are you seriously making me deal with this alone?" I replied, "These are the vendors you asked to send decisions to you and Derek. They now have your contact for payment." She didn't like that. The decorator kept part of the deposit because of the custom order. That money was gone. The photographer returned a partial refund to my card because the next payment had not processed yet. The planner kept the initial fee but confirmed no further charges would go to me. The florist refunded a small amount after subtracting administrative costs. I lost money. I'm not going to pretend I walked away untouched. But every non-refundable fee felt cheaper than waking up married to someone who had learned she could shame me into funding my own replacement. Sabrina texted constantly for the first few days. Her messages came in waves. First anger. "You made me look awful. You wanted everyone to hate me. You embarrassed me in front of my family." Then apology. "I know I said things badly. I was overwhelmed. I should have included you more." Then blame again. "But you didn't have to cancel everything. You know how much pressure I was under. You never understood how important this was to me." I read them all, mostly because I needed to remind myself not to soften the story in my head. Finally, I replied once. "I didn't make you look awful. I stopped covering the parts you kept hiding." She didn't answer for almost an hour. Then she wrote, "So that's it? You're throwing us away over wedding stress?" I stared at that one for a long time. Wedding stress. That was the blanket she wanted to throw over all of it. The changed contacts. The private jokes. The public lies. The message where she said I would cave. Derek sitting in my place while my name stayed on invoices. I wrote back, "This wasn't wedding stress. This was how you treated me when you thought I wouldn't leave." Her next message was short. "Wow. Then, you're colder than I ever thought you could be." Maybe I was. Or maybe I had finally stopped being warm enough for both of us. The ring conversation happened in our living room 3 nights later. Sabrina asked to talk in person. I agreed because there were still shared finances to separate, and I didn't want the ending of my engagement to happen entirely through texts. She sat on the far end of the couch, twisting the ring around her finger. She looked smaller than she usually did, less polished. Her hair was pulled back, and she wore an old sweatshirt I had seen 100 times. For a minute, I remembered the woman who used to steal dumplings off my plate. The woman who could make a boring night feel special. Grief is strange like that. It doesn't wait until the person is fully gone. Sabrina looked at me and said, "Do you still love me?" I hated the question because the answer did not save anything. "Yes," I said, "but not in a way I can marry." She started crying quietly. "I messed up," she said. "You did. I got caught up in how everything looked. That wasn't the only problem." "I know." I waited. She wiped under her eye with her sleeve. "Derek made me feel like I wasn't asking for too much." I nodded slowly. "And I made you feel like you could get too much paid for." She flinched. "I didn't mean to use you." "But you did." Her voice broke. "I thought you'd forgive me." That was probably the most honest thing she said. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Sabrina, I'm not marrying someone who has to lose me to respect me." She covered her face. I didn't comfort her. That was one of the hardest parts. For years, if Sabrina cried, my body moved before my brain did. I would sit beside her, put a hand on her back, lower my voice, try to fix the room. This time I stayed where I was. We talked through the money because it had to be done. I had already written out what I contributed, what she contributed, what had been refunded, what was non-refundable, and what remained under each person's name. I told her I would pay the small portion I was still legally responsible for. I would not pay anything else. Any vendor she continued with would need her direct authorization. She asked if I was keeping refunded money. If the refund came back to my card from a payment I made, yes, I said. If any refund comes from money you contributed, it's yours. She looked embarrassed, but she didn't argue. Then she slowly took off the ring and set it on the coffee table between us. The sound it made was tiny, barely anything. Still, it felt final. I don't know what to tell people, she whispered. The truth would be a start. She gave a sad, bitter little laugh. You make it sound easy. No, I said. I'm telling you it's your responsibility. She looked at me for a long time. What if people ask? Tell them we ended the engagement because trust was broken. And if they ask how? That's up to you. But if you keep telling people I destroyed the wedding because I was jealous, I'll send the same timeline to anyone you drag into it. Her face crumpled again, but I didn't take it back. After she left for the night, I sat alone in the living room with the ring on the table and the folder beside it. The apartment felt too quiet. Not peaceful yet, just emptied out. For the next couple of weeks, the friend group did what friend groups do when a shared story breaks. Some people reached out. Some didn't. Mia called me and cried, which I hadn't expected. I'm sorry, she said. I laughed at those jokes. I didn't think about what they meant. I know. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. There was a pause. She made it sound like you didn't care, Mia said. I cared too much for too long. Aaron texted a shorter apology. I judged without facts. That was wrong. Sorry, man. I appreciated it, but I didn't suddenly feel close to everyone again. Apologies don't always rebuild what judgment damaged. Sometimes they just mark the place where something broke. Derek disappeared from the conversation faster than I expected. Not fully, I'm sure. People like Derek don't vanish from lives where they still get attention. But he stopped showing up in group chats. He didn't offer to pay any balances. He didn't help Sabrina deal with vendors. I heard from Mia that when Sabrina asked him to cover part of the decor cancellation because it had been his idea, he said, I didn't agree to that. I was just giving opinions. That sentence told the whole story. He wanted influence without accountability. Sabrina gave it to him. I paid for it until I didn't. Elaine called me once more. Her voice was softer than before. I spoke to Sabrina, she said. How did that go? Badly. I almost smiled. I'm sorry. She feels betrayed by everyone. I didn't answer. Elaine sighed. I told her being exposed is not the same as being betrayed. That surprised me. She continued. I should have listened to you before I accused you. I appreciate you saying that. I don't know what happens with her now. That's not something I can help with anymore. I know. There was no satisfying victory in that call. Just a woman realizing her daughter had made choices Elaine could not defend. Sabrina and I finished separating everything in writing. It was boring, which was good. Boring meant clean. Boring meant no screaming in parking lots, no midnight threats, no dramatic scenes. Just emails, numbers, confirmations, and one last exchange of things we had left at each other's places. She sent one final long message after that. I could tell she had rewritten it a few times because the tone kept changing paragraph by paragraph. She said she was sorry for making me feel small. She said she missed me. She said I had made decisions too quickly. She said she wished I had fought harder for us. She said Derek had gotten in her head, which annoyed me because Derek didn't open the wedding account, didn't type those messages from her phone, didn't tell vendors I only needed final invoices. He played his part, but Sabrina handed him the script. I didn't answer most of it. I only wrote, I hope you learn from this, but I'm done being the place where you learn it. Then I muted the thread. I kept the folder for a while. Not because I wanted to reread it. I hated looking at it. But I needed it in case the story shifted again. Eventually, when enough time passed and no new accusations came, I put the papers in a box with the ring receipt, the cancellation confirmations, and a few photos I wasn't ready to throw away. I'm not proud of everything. I should have set boundaries earlier. I should have stopped laughing along when jokes made me feel smaller. I should have asked why I was so willing to pay for peace. I let Sabrina learn that if she smiled afterward, disrespect didn't cost her anything. But I'm also not ashamed of how I left. I didn't hack anything. I didn't lie. I didn't destroy her property or scream in her face or invent an affair to make myself look better. I checked the contracts. I canceled what I was allowed to cancel. I stopped authorizing my money. And when she let people believe I had abandoned her over jealousy, I showed them why I had really walked away. For months, I thought being patient made me a good partner. What it really did was teach Sabrina that I would keep absorbing damage as long as she called it love, stress, or a joke. I didn't ruin the wedding. I just stopped paying for a version of it where I was already being replaced. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.